of Tuesday, June 13th.
Matrix.
How'd you manage that?
That was wild.
The first thing we have is public comment. I haven't been notified of any this evening, but if there's anybody here from the public wishing to speak. If not, then the first item on our agenda is a proclamation for Juneteenth. So let me turn to Mr. King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, this is an honor. Whereas on July 4th, 1776, the 13 United States of America pronounced their Declaration of Independence, the self-evident truth that all men are created equal, even as those states continue to allow the cruel and inhumane enslavement of African people stolen from their homelands. And whereas in 1863, during the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that all persons held as slaves within the states then in a state of rebellion are and henceforth shall be free. And whereas due to the slow advance of Union troops, enslaved people in Texas did not know of the signing of the proclamation and their subsequent freedom until Union General Gordon Granger issued General Order Number 3 on June 19, 1865. And whereas in 1866, formerly enslaved people and their allies began commemorating the anniversary of the issuance of General Order Number 3 on June 19th, calling the date Juneteenth, with celebrations spreading throughout the South and the country over the next century and a half. And whereas in 2020, Governor Charlie Baker signed into law a bill designating Juneteenth as a legal holiday in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on June 19th, 2023, be declared Juneteenth in the town of Needham, and that all residents be encouraged to observe Juneteenth as a celebration of the resilience of Black Americans and an opportunity for education about the true history of this country. Signed this 13th day of June.
If I could have a motion
So moved.
in a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
I'm thinking we have Heidi remote. I need to do roll call votes for every vote. Marcus,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Heidi.
Aye.
I hate to ask you to speak again. I'm sorry. And the chair says aye. 5-0. Thank you. And our next proclamation, because it's a big proclamation night.
It is.
Thank you.
Okay. Whereas the town of Needham is a welcoming community, and whereas Needham values the diversity of its residents and people everywhere. And whereas Needham respects the contribution that each and every resident makes to our town. And whereas Needham appreciates the rich tapestry of ethnic, cultural, racial, sexual, and gender identities of its residents. And whereas Needham embraces our LGBTQIA plus community, and whereas LGBTQIA plus youth are at an especially high risk of experiencing discrimination, mistreatment, and violence. And the town is committed to ensuring that they are safe, valued, and supported. Now, therefore, be it resolved that June 2023 be declared Pride Month in the town of Needham, and that all residents be encouraged to recognize and acknowledge the contributions of the LGBTQIA plus members in our community as we continue to advance the principles of liberty, equality, inclusivity, and justice for all. Signed this 13th day of June.
A motion
So moved.
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? I would note that both of these are about people being people and being human. And I would hope it's our intent in town that everybody be treated as humans, one to the other, and respected and welcomed that way.
That is a goal.
If I can roll call, Marcus,
Yes.
Kevin,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
and Heidi. You can give us a thumbs up. We'll take that too.
Sorry, my unmute didn't work. Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. The next item on our agenda tonight is the start of several grant of locations that we have. It's a joint grant of location for 140 Kendrick Street. And I'm not sure who we have online. It doesn't look that we have any representatives maybe in the room. So we should have representatives, Ms. Callender from Eversource, Marcel Rogers from Verizon, and Fernanda Brena from Sunwealth Corporation.
Just allowing them to share their video right now.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Ross Bilodeau. I'm here to represent Verizon New England this evening. We're the ones who'll be placing this poll.
Hello there. Thank you. So the first thing I would ask is if you could just briefly describe what this particular project is.
Absolutely. Verizon is looking to place one jointly owned pole with Eversource, a pole number 35 over 16B, approximately 353 feet west of the center line of 3rd Avenue and approximately 65 feet east from the existing pole 35 over 16A. This is to support a solar project which is happening at 140 Kendrick Street. So this pole will be the tie-in point where they run over all of their electrical equipment and tie into the existing grid. Verizon is a maintaining party in this area, so that's why we are being asked to place that pole and not Eversource.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate that clarification. Ms. Fitzpatrick, is everything in order with this?
It is.
All right, great. Are there any questions from the board? It is a public hearing, so I don't know if there's anybody from the public. I don't see anybody.
Madam
Heidi?
Chair?
Yep.
I just have a question about, excuse my ridiculous voice. I have a question about the diagram that was drawn up. I don't see that I have a page number on my digital copy here, but it's the petition plan. And on this plan, it looks as though Kendrick Street narrows quite significantly as it comes down to 3rd Ave and the intersection. But in fact, this area here is at least 5 lanes wide, and it doesn't appear to be reflected on the map. It looks to me from the state of this that the poles look like they're going to be placed in the middle of the street, which I'm sure is not the case. But I just want to understand better how this is diagrammed.
Sure. I'm not sure of the exact layout of Kendrick Street in this area, so I'm sure you can speak to it more than I can. But I can assure you that the poles will not be placed in the street. This is, simply a stick drawing we use for these sort of petitions. So it may not be 100% geographically correct, but it's just used to get a simple idea of what we're trying to do out there.
Okay, so they're going on the PTC side of the street, on the
That's correct.
sidewalk?
Yes.
Right before the driveway, right?
Yes.
It
I
looks
believe
like it's right before the driveway, right? It does indicate that it's not to scale, and I think we would all agree with that, so.
Right.
Heidi, is that sufficient?
Yep, that's fine. Just want to make sure because it looks very different than reality.
Yep. I was going to say, it actually doesn't even show the driveway, so all those things are true. Is there anybody online who has a question?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, then I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair. Sorry. The select board approve and sign a petition from Verizon New England and Eversource Energy to place one pole approximately 353 feet westerly of center line of the 3rd Avenue and approximately 65 feet easterly from existing pole P.35/16A.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, Marcus,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Heidi,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right.
Thank you very much for your time. Take care.
So there's one more, well, it's just an Eversource, I guess, grant of location related to 140 Kendrick Street. Ms. Calendar?
Yes, good evening. So once we have that pole in place, Eversource is seeking to grant a location to install approximately 8 feet of conduit from that pole into the private property. And this is, again, a part of the project for 140 Kendrick.
Great, thank you.
Right.
Ms. Fitzpatrick, is everything in order?
It is.
Are there questions from members of the board?
No, but I'm noticing the maps are a lot more detailed.
Well, this one came from Eversource. Maybe they have better maps. All right. Is there anybody either in the room or online who has a question or a comment? It is public hearing.
No, Madam Chair.
If there's not, then I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the select board approve and sign a petition from Eversource Energy to install approximately 8 feet of conduit in Kendrick Street.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, Marcus,
Yes.
Kevin,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Heidi,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. All right, the next public hearing is an Eversource grant of location for 377 Chestnut Street. Ms. Calendar,
Yes,
back to you.
we're
again.
seeking a, thank you. Eversource is seeking to grant a location to install approximately 82 feet of conduit into Chestnut Street. And this is to upgrade the service at Roach Brothers due to a renovation of their market.
Okay, Ms. Fitzpatrick, is everything in order?
Yes.
Are there any questions from members of the board?
Yeah, is this going under Chestnut? Or
It
just-
is. It
Okay.
is. We're coming from the manhole across the street that's in front of the Y, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a YM or YWCA. But right from that manhole under Chestnut Street to 2 feet inside the private property there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
Yes.
are there any questions?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, if there's not, then I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the select board approve and sign a petition from Eversource Energy to install approximately 82 feet of conduit in Chestnut Street.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, Marcus?
Yes.
Kevin,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Heidi,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. We're all in favor. The last grant of location, and we'll be glad to have Roach Brothers get the power that they need for their renovation. So this is also a good thing. The last grant of location is 1177 Central Ave. Ms. Calendar.
Yes, so Eversource is seeking a grant of location to install approximately 14 feet of conduit into Central Avenue. And this is to provide underground service to a new home at 1177 Central Avenue.
Okay, Ms. Fitzpatrick, is it in order?
It is.
Wonderful. Are there any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, are there any questions from members of the public? Either in the room or online? None.
Hand raised, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Then I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the select board approve and sign a petition from Eversource to install approximately 14 feet of conduit to Central Ave.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Marcus?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank
Okay,
you so much.
thank you.
Good night.
Good evening, Ms. Calendar. All right, that brings us to our next public hearing, which is a public hearing on the water and sewer rates. And so if I could welcome Mr. Davison and Ms. Lustig and Mr. Retzky and our members of the Water and Sewer Rate Structure Commission.
Do we want to move?
If you can just speak up if you'd like to do that.
Jump on the wall.
Well, they're moving now. You can do it.
All right, Madam Chair, it's just, I make a motion, we move the consent calendar
Second that.
and appointments, no, just calendar.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Marcus?
Aye.
Kevin? Kathy?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That brings us to our water and sewer rates. This is an important piece of work every year, and we are not voting tonight. This is a public hearing night, but let me turn it over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we're coming before you to give you an overview of the rate recommendation that the Water Sewer Rate Structure Committee has for you. I would like to acknowledge that the 4 members of the committee are here. The chair, John Delrico, is
Right here.
to my left, and we have Matt Zollner, Harold Berger, and John Terry in the back.
Thank you.
And of course, without the need of introductions, but I will, we have our Director of Public Works, Kara Lustig, and our Superintendent of Water and Sewer Operations, Mike Retzky. So with that, Madam Chair, the committee has a recommendation after reviewing options over a course of 3 meetings during the months of April and May. The recommendation that they have for the board, the primary recommendation is would result in a average single-family household water usage, which is based upon an industrial a U.S. Average used in the industry of 12,000 cubic feet a year, which would result in a 2.6% increase in the annual water bill for that household. In coming with a rate recommendation, there are various considerations that must be looked at. One, of course, is what do you need to cover for expenditures? And from year to year, expenditures can vary because of the volatility of the utility, because water usage and the amount of sewage that has to be treated changes, and sometimes by very large margins from year to year. So we look at a forecast of a 3-year window of what is estimated would be the cost of running both of those operations. That another factor we looked at is volume. What is going to be the billable volume? Because in the end, you have your expenses, but then you need to know how to divide those expenses up, how many units you have to recover the cost of those. And we look at water and sewer consumption over the prior 5 years. And that we use as an average in terms of estimating the next year's rate. So we now have an average of what we anticipate needing to meet expenditures. And we now have an estimate of what we need, what the volume will be to spread the cost out amongst. And those are the 2 factors. We then take the current rate structure and then apply the current rates against the estimated volumes to see if that's sufficient to meet the costs that are forecast. And if not, then we look at different approaches in terms of covering that shortfall. Because the water and sewer rate structure process is a combination of averages and various assumptions, the view is that any rate structure that appears to be falling within 98.5% to 101.5% is basically meeting the target for revenue generation, because there's so many variables. The next thing is then the different rate options that are looked at. We apply those rates against the estimated quantities and see where the total revenue anticipated to be generated from the rate structure would fall under, and again trying to fall within that range. A couple of factors that are impacting the averages. One, the board is of course as well aware, and that was Coca-Cola's withdrawal of its bottling operations. In the window that we're looking at, the Coca-Cola for water accounted for 12.5% of all the billable water used in the fiscal year. And in their basically last year of operation, fiscal 2020, they represented 7/100ths of a percentage, which is comparable to some restaurants in town and other small commercial establishments. So there's just another commercial entity using water in not generating the billable volume, which was at top step. Top step is the rate that's the highest, which generated effectively a subsidy for the community. That was recognized when they had informed us that they were going out, that we were going to have to start changing our rate structure and accounting for that loss. Well, that is where we were right before COVID. A plan was looked at and adopted. COVID struck and the plan was put aside where the rates weren't adjusted for a couple of years. Last year, the current year that we're in, fiscal 2023, the first true implementation of that transition began with the 2023 rates. Here in 2024, we still have the impact of the Coca-Cola withdrawal, as well as increased costs. As everyone's aware, the inflationary costs of everything has gone up, but in particular, there are costs associated with the delivery of clean water and the process of processing sewage, which has gone up even more, and those costs are not expected to abate. So because of that, that's why we were looking at the need for a rate increase, but also try to continue taking a slower approach in terms of implementing that rate increase. The different options that were looked at in total, there were more than 50 different rate considerations that ranged between going up on the annual bill by 0.4% to as high as 6%. And
I
again,
was going to note for people that this is scenario 52 that's recommended. So, sorry, Dave. Yeah,
so, and
significant analysis.
And with the this recommendation is 2.6%. The other thing that normally we look at 5 years and take that 5-year average. Because of what was unique in 2020, we actually pulled that data out of the average and used effectively a 4-year average. 2020, the impact was COVID, and there was a dramatic change and would have truly skewed the billable volumes and require a substantial, much higher increase in the rates just to break even. But it is unlikely that we would be at that level that would have generated for fiscal 2024, and hence why that data was pulled out. With all that, and there was further analysis, which was evident when we showed 3/4 of billing. We look at 3/4 of billing because fiscal 23, all we have as data is 3/4 of billing. And we see that there is some moderation in terms of, one, the very high residential use came down, which would be anticipated as people return to work. And two, the significant drop in commercial usage started itching back up as establishments have been reopening and such. And this data is showing, we saw that in 22, and in 23, that is still is true. What is very notable in fiscal 2023, if you looked at the table on page 4 of the memo, you look at the secondary use, which is the irrigation water, how significantly more that has been than any year other than when COVID. Now, there's one major concern with irrigation is that is impacted more by weather than indoor use, but both are affected by weather. And last year, water usage was up significantly because of the drier late spring and all of summer, and our usage was up. That was clearly reflected in the MWRA assessment we received because we're billed for the water usage of the prior calendar year in the next fiscal year. That drove that. We also know that it's been wet this spring and this summer, and that although ironically, even as of yesterday, we still have a rain deficit. The amount of rainy days that we've had, consumption of irrigation has dropped because it's more psychological than actually looking and measuring the lawns. That will reduce billable consumption. I'm telling you all this is because one of the concerns that the Sewer Water Rate Commission committee had is relying too much on irrigation in order to avoid a rate increase is setting yourself up for failure, because if you have a significant change in consumption and the water rates for irrigation are much higher than in the domestic use, the water used inside the home, that if that drop off happens, you can have a significant revenue shortfall. That's why it's more of a go slow approach in terms of overly relying upon irrigation water in setting those rates. And with that, Madam Chair, as you mentioned, there was a total of 58 combinations, and the committee has the recommendation. The committee also recognized that should the board want more than one option to consider, they gave two other options for consideration, which were outlined on page 8 of the memo. And with that, Madam Chair, I will stop and prepared questions, and the chair certainly can address the thoughts of the committee.
And Dave, as I'm reading these charts, part of the structure is you've actually added a new tier to the structure as a part of the recommendation. It looked like in some different categories. Am I reading that correctly?
One of the options was actually looking at perhaps collapsing two of the rates into one rate, and that was in sewer. That was one of the scenarios that we looked at. The committee did not recommend implementing that recommendation.
Okay. All right. And the other question that I had, I noticed that we said here we were at 12,000 cubic feet, which equates to 90,000 gallons.
Correct.
For years, we've heard about 60,000 gallons as a threshold when we were under water restrictions.
The 65 gallons per person per day.
Okay.
And in fact, there is another table provided to the committee, which is also on page 8, which shows that based upon the most recent data that DEP has, the average water, the actual average water usage in Needham in the last year that they had information for, which was calendar year 2021, the average was 9,094 cubic feet. So in that instance, the proposed rate structure would result in a 2.56%, or again, rounding 2.6% increase in terms of the average Needham household consuming 9,094 cubic feet.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? And I would just say to members of the public who are watching, all of this information is available online in the packet. If you would like to read through the detailed analysis and see what the steps are and think about that relative to your most recent bill, you can go look at it on that basis if you'd like. Do you have a question?
Yeah, this is tremendous and exhaustive. How important is it? Like, this is an enterprise budget, is this not?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. Yes.
So when we spike the landing, what's the leeway to sort of, like, in one scenario, we were going to be what, a $20,000 shortfall, or another one we're going to be over by $250,000. So how are you trying to spike the landing? How much do we have to before the town kicks in?
Well, anything that shows that it would not hit the target, the town, the taxpayers, meaning tax dollars, would have to be.
Correct. Okay.
Correct. And the recommendations that are before you would not require a taxpayer, would not require property taxes to subsidize water or sewer operations. I should remind the committee, however, there is a real estate tax or general fund contribution
Right.
that's appropriated by town meeting to the sewer enterprise fund, but that is not for sewer operations. That's for the drains portion, which is accounted for in the sewer enterprise fund, because effectively the work is done by the employees of the water and sewer department. And for internal reasons, it makes sense for the appropriation to be there. But because it is a general fund expense, or another way of putting it, if Needham were to get out of the water and sewer business, we sold that off.
Right.
The responsibilities of NIPIs, the responsibilities of drains and stuff is still upon the town. And therefore, that is why it's a general fund contribution and supported by the general fund tax levy.
Okay.
But there is no, based upon the recommended rate structure, it is not anticipated that there would be a need for the general fund to subsidize
Okay.
either water or sewer.
Okay.
And technically, Dave, the drains function is part of stormwater, right? And it could be at some point that it could get accounted for differently, but for now we do it this way because those are the workers who are doing the work and it's most efficient for them to just do it within the course of
Yes, and
how
in
they
fairness,
operate.
the workers are efficient, no matter where we budget it.
No
It's
matter
more,
where-
it's more
right,
on the
that's absolutely
administrative
true.
side.
Okay, but when we think about it, drains are stormwater as an issue.
Do you mind if I just a quick follow-up?
Yeah.
A lot of communities do their storm drains as part of their highway operations. In Needham, we've decided to bundle that with our water and sewer, largely because that's the staff that understands how water moves. So we've interacted with other communities and sometimes their highway departments, which are really good at making sure that roads are laid down correctly and things meet ADA, don't always think about water the same way. So we find it to be an advantage to have it factored into the sewer enterprise fund as opposed to into highway.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
And then one more.
I can't see Heidi. Can I see Heidi? Oh, she's got, okay. Great. You don't have a hand up. I'm just checking for that.
Got the thumbs up.
Another question. Go,
Yeah,
Kevin.
I can't find it in here, but we did you presented a number of comparison charts, how Needham lines up with area towns.
Page 11.
Still not gonna find it.
I was gonna say, I haven't gotten that far.
How do we measure up like percentage increase? Like, so this is done alphabetically. Needham's just broken down at the bottom, but where does it Needham sit amongst area towns
Of the,
in change and cost and value?
in comparison of the communities that we compare ourselves to, and the analogy is these are communities that also use MWRA
Yeah.
services, but that's an important factor in their communities that basically have a full water service, right, and sewer system. In those instances, Needham of the out of 19 communities,
Right.
Needham is 15th. Number one is the most expensive, and so we're 15th in that list. If you, through several comparisons, I show what the 1 year changes, a 3 year changes, and a 5 year changes. I also show what the average changes for the communities that
Yeah.
we compare ourselves to without Needham's numbers in there. Secondly, I show what Needham's 1 year change, 3 year change, and 5 year change is. And another thing, which is data now that the MWRA is provided, is they have the changes of all systems, not only all the communities that have MWRA service, and they have communities in the western part of the state, central part of the state,
Okay.
and eastern part of the state, and those averages. When you look at the 1 year change of last year, the increases of the communities that we compare ourselves was anywhere from no change at all to a high of 18.5%. And not to pick on them, but the 18.5% increase was Wellesley. Whereas Needham had an increase of 4.7% that year. But then when you and the average for the group of all those 19 communities
Right.
is a 4.6% increase. And then across all the MWRA communities, again, communities from the western part of the state, central part of the state, and the east was a 3.1% increase. That's the 1 year change. When you look at the 3 year change, those same comparisons, we're looking at the group average was a 4.6% change over 3 years. The MWRA communities overall was 3.1%. In Needham was a 4.7%. Because we're basically measuring the same period of time because we only had one rate increase over that 3 year
Okay.
period of time. Then you look at the more longer term 5 years, and the average of the communities was 15.9% increase over the 5 years of the MWRA communities overall across the state. It was a 16.7%. In the case of Needham, it's a 7.5%. Now, to give you even additional, that's how it all is as of now, based upon all the data that we have from all the communities from last year. Even if the board were to vote the recommended rate structure, Needham would still be 13th out of 19th with the proposed rate recommendation to you. And the increase over 5 years, without even knowing what the rate changes will be in all these other communities, would be 10% over 10 years, which is still below most of the communities, below the averages of all the communities we compare ourselves to, and below the average of the communities across Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Thank you.
To be fair, right, the Wellesley number went up quite so much because they had to stop using their own well water and move to using MWRA water, which they had not been using because of PFAS issues. So that drove a huge spike in their costs. We dodged that bullet, at least for this round. So,
Keep it so.
okay. Any other questions? Anything else you want to tell us, John, from the?
I think Dave has been very thorough in his explanation. As always, he's presented us with many scenarios that really drive us and make us think. And committee was very thoughtful in trying to share that burden just across the community. So I want to thank him for that work. And yeah, I think that's about it.
We're grateful, and we're grateful also to the committee for taking the time to deliberate on what those options were and what you wish to recommend. This is a public hearing, so I don't know if there's anybody in the room or on Zoom who would like to comment.
No hands on Zoom, Madam Chair.
Okay. If there are no further questions, then the expectation is that this would come back at our next meeting. I do support the recommendation that's come forward. And we would be voting then. We're open to comments from the public between now and then. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Lots of work. I'm waiting for the year when you can kind of nail this in 12 possible scenarios.
You ask them to narrow it down when you get more back. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you to the committee for coming to be supportive tonight and also for all your time on this as well. All right, the next item on our agenda this evening is the, I'll get back there. The public hearing on the alcohol license for Pancho's Taqueria. Carlos is here and Chief Schlittler is here. Carlos, we've met several times at our chair, vice chair. Unfortunately,
Unfortunately.
now here for a public hearing. So I'm going to turn it over first to the chief, actually, to describe what's kind of gotten us to this point.
Good evening. On April 12, 2023, the Needham Police Department conducted underage alcohol compliance checks of all establishments that hold a liquor license in Needham. As part of these checks, an underage party would go into the establishment and attempt to purchase alcohol only using their real identification. Underage party number 1 went into Pancho's Taqueria, 1450 Highland Ave at approximately 4:22 p.m. Once inside, she ordered a Corona beer. The waiter identified as Johnny Souza requested her identification, which he checked it and then served the beer. Officer Sarah Timmerman identified herself and explained that she was conducting a compliance check and that he had served alcohol to an underage party. Johnny was able to call the owner, Carlos Shavara, and Officer Timmerman was able to explain what happened. Carlos was very cooperative on the phone and explained that he had implemented more training and safeguards such as the ID scanner. Carlos indicated he would continue training and would ensure a manager himself will be present on site. Obviously, I think as the board knows that this is the 3rd violation.
So because it's a 3rd violation, that's why we're having the meeting in public here. And the board, having read through the motions, understands there's actually 2 issues here. One is that this is the 3rd violation, so there would be some pulling of a suspending of the license for some period of days related to it being the 3rd violation. The other one is the question that there is this issue relative to training required. So even though Carlos has implemented additional training, this particular staff member who served had not been trained, right? And it is very important that everybody who does serve be trained before they can serve so that they understand the criticality of the decisions that they're making. So I want to take a moment just to see if the rest of the board has questions related to this particular issue.
Yeah.
Kevin.
So the person, I'm sorry.
So did you state, what was the name of the person that you stated?
That served?
Uh-huh.
It was
Johanny?
Oh, it was Johnny Souza, is how it was in the report.
Yeah, but so because I'm confused. I had a John working there and a Johanny. So is it a male or female? The one that
It just said Johanny Souza.
because
I had understood it was a
Souza.
female
was
that
female,
they
right?
spoke,
Okay. Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
Then that might be correct.
Okay.
all right.
Okay. The person, it was 2 issues. One is the person was close to legal, but not legal. So technically it was absolutely not okay. It was completely not okay.
It was 12 days. Yeah.
Yes, 12 days. And although it's tempting, they're not the birthday committee for people. So that should not have happened. But you also don't tip, so the people, your employees are not tip certified?
She was not.
Or any others?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So the expectation in our legislation says that any employee who serves needs to be tip certified and trained.
Right. Okay.
Okay, that's the requirement, and that we need to use some kind of
Scanner.
mechanism like the scanner, which is a piece that you put in place. So making this requirement that any employee who serves be trained
Mhm.
is really the missing link. And I believe that that's been true in the last 2. In fact, cases, it's been somebody who's been not yet trained.
Mhm.
So that's the really important piece for us to work with
Exactly.
you on and for you to implement so that
Absolutely.
they understand if they are not trained, they may not serve, period.
Mhm.
And then hopefully can make the right decision.
And you have a checker, right? A scanner.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, at checkout, right? At the
As
register.
at the register, yes. It's on the iPad. It's really easy to use.
Yep.
Really easy to use. But
But was not used that day.
it was the ID was checked
Right.
and it was determined that there was. I mean, she knew that it
Right.
was
So this
12 days.
is not a sin of
So
commission. This
it
is
wasn't
not
an error.
Right.
It was given because
Okay.
she thought it was. She was being cool.
Right.
Giving it out. She didn't understand the
Right.
seriousness of the situation. which, it ended up with her termination
Okay.
on the spot. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think just what makes it a little tougher, because this is the third violation since, what's it been, a year and a half? And so that's just, I think looking at that and just saying that out loud is just really disappointing. And I know that you're taking steps and trying to put them in place, but it seems like there has to be more done with it. Yeah, it just,
There is no more disappointment. I mean, I know you're disappointed, but I'm even more disappointed.
okay.
It is basically, we treat the two stores as one, and we train them all together. And we got Dedham once on the with the occasion where we actually serve, and it's been the same training, and it's worked at the Dedham location, but not at the Needham location.
And it's, I assume, different people working at each place, so it's not the same.
I cross train them all the time, but it's just not. The one that before this one, it's been so many different scenarios that
Right. And I think I'd feel better if they weren't so close together. And I'd feel like, I'm not saying you're not taking it seriously, because it sounds like that you are, but it's just hard to digest that there's been so many and such a few.
I'm with you.
Period. So that's why I'm leaning more towards the heavier side than the lighter side of the suspension for the days that we're going to consider. But
and we understand it, and it is a learning.
That's all we can do is learn, and hopefully that we don't see you again unless we're coming to eat there.
Like I said before, one of the things that we're doing, we are actually conducting our own, sending friends, the sons of or the children of our friends to go in and try to buy alcohol.
So your own compliance check.
Our own shopping, just to make sure that we are following what we're supposed to do.
And have you had any suggestions? Have you talked to any other restaurants and people and how they're doing it and what's been successful for them as far as where you stand right now?
That's why we're doing this, because a friend of mine, he is the GM of a different restaurant in Waltham, and he suggests, he's like, I will do it. I will send. He will do it with his family, and he's actually helping me out, and I do the same at his location. Now they know me, but I will send different friends of mine, my sister, and that's what we're all doing to make sure that we don't fall. And like I said last time, I love you and all, but I wouldn't like to be here.
We would not want you here. Yeah. Okay.
So I think the biggest thing is just when you hire somebody, ensuring that they understand that they may not serve until they've had that training.
Now the team that I have is seasoned, so they've been there, and I'm using more of the ones that I have in the Dedham location to
provide that service.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Heidi, I'm looking to see if you have any questions. It looks like no hands. Shaking head. Okay. Any questions from any other board members? My understanding is we did not see any questions from members of the public.
That's right, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. So the board has several votes in front of us and needs to make a decision. What I'm hearing is that we do find that there was a violation. One of the questions for the board will be the number of days to be served, for the suspension to be served, and whether those days are served immediately and consecutively or consecutively on dates set. Okay. We will need to send notice to the ABCC. And then we have this question of, again, I note that we find that the town's alcohol regulations were violated relative to training required by staff who serve. So that was a violation that's found. And moving to suspend the license. I think I understand that is a period of 1 day, Miles, that I'm looking for, and is the date that would be recommended there, and the date that's recommended is one that we have set, or how was that date arrived at? I'm just curious. If you could come up and join us, that would be great. Thank you, Miles.
Madam Chair, the date, the option is up to the board whether to allow the licensee to select that date. Of note, this occurred during, right before the passage of the new alcohol regulations, which do state that suspensions are at the discretion of the select board. The older regulations don't specify either way. Historically, the board has allowed the licensee to select those dates under the prior regulations, which this violation did occur under.
Okay.
Right.
So the date that's in the draft language that I saw, is that a date that is recommended to this board? Is a date?
I apologize for not bringing my binder up.
um,
So the date in the language, they may be served consecutively or dates in the future. And on the second page, again, it is the dates really are up. There are no dates specific. It simply lists whether you'd like.
I'm
them to
sorry,
be
I was
done.
looking at this and it's for Cook. So I was thinking that was for this, but the second question as it relates to the violation related to training, the recommended period for the number of days is that I
The
don't
recommendation
actually,
was 1 day, I believe, in the appendix.
in the appendix. Okay, I don't have the appendix here. That's what I'm realizing, that I don't have a, okay. All right, so I guess the question in front of this board is, what is the number of days that we would then determine to use in vote section B and vote section, so 1B and then vote section 2B?
Right.
And Madam Chair, I do apologize. There was no recommended suspension for that second violation. This being a first penalized violation of a different kind, that would be a 1 to 3 day at the board's discretion if it was under the same rubric that the compliance checks were under the prior regulations.
So to recap, the
So-
compliance check
3 to 5.
would be
3 to
recommended
5 days.
3 to 5, and then with the violation of the bylaw, the regulations itself, 1 to 3.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to note that Heidi has her hand raised.
Okay, Heidi?
Hi, can I just clarify? Did I hear you say that you had let go the employee who made this error?
We had what? I missed that. I'm sorry.
Let the employee go.
Oh, yes, that the employee had been let go is what we've been told
As a result of this error?
as a result of this error.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know what the sense of the board is. I suppose I would recommend at this point that the board might consider, I'll give you a trial balloon, that relative to this being the third case, and with the understanding that there is a second violation that we're also dealing with, that I might recommend 3 days and that they be served consecutively, which is something that we didn't used to do, but that we would take advantage of doing that. And I'm willing to let Miles have some discussion to determine what those 3 consecutive days are, but it would be my recommendation that it be for 3 days. And then that the second violation be added to that for 1 day. And as far as I'm concerned, all of it can be consecutive.
So a total of 4 days.
So a total of 4
Consecutive
days
days.
consecutive.
That's fine. I might say do the 1 day at a different time. But
I'm
just if you
amenable
don't,
to that, but so,
I think consecutively works. And I know you said 3 days. I probably would have pushed for 5 just because of the severity and the short period of time that everything happened. I would have said 5 consecutive days, but obviously it's a board vote. I just don't understand. That's all. That's just, but I know we can only do better. That is a goal, to do better, to learn. But I can't see it happening again, hopefully in the next less than 6 months or whatever it is. And I look forward to seeing what's put in place and how we carry that out.
Miles, my recollection is that if there were to be a fourth, that revocation is an option for the board at that point.
Not for compliance.
Not
Not
for
for
compliance.
Not for compliance,
checks.
okay.
Revocation.
So it's
right.
for the technical issues
Right.
that would be.
That'd be
okay.
correct.
All right.
It would be, though, under the new regulations, which, if I recall correctly, and I don't have them in front of me, did remove that 5th step. So it would be 4th, and it would be 10 plus.
Plus days.
Right.
Right.
so your first one was in December 1st, second was December 7th. You don't like December. And then the next one you
Cool.
mentioned next year, April 23.
Right. Which is,
If you want to make that, 3-1 and all together.
3-1 and all the days are consecutive. Heidi, what are you thinking?
I think that 4 days consecutive sounds appropriate. I'm sorry that I appreciate the seriousness with which the owner took this, letting the employee go, but I do feel badly that the employee was let go, because it does seem like all of the precautions were in place, but somehow there wasn't an understanding on the part of the employees, the urgency that the owner felt about complying with this policy. So it's unfortunate, but it does seem appropriate. But I do think that communication is the most critical part here. And so it's important that perhaps the 4 days consecutive will make it absolutely mission critical for this restaurant to communicate this to all of the employees in both locations.
and are we seeing immediately, or what are we saying? Because I don't think we established that.
So I think I said I would be willing to have Miles
okay, I think I-
determine which 4 days they are, and he can let us know with Carlos that they can determine the 4 days. Okay.
And just for the board's education, what that usually has been, if it was up to the restaurant, it'd be communication back and forth, making sure that these were days that the restaurant would have been normally been open.
Correct.
And so it's up to the restaurant as well, whether they wish to simply surrender their license, which is physically surrendering the license, and just not serving alcohol on those days. And other establishments have simply chosen to close completely. It's up to them, but they can't serve alcohol whether the doors are open or closed on a day that they would have otherwise have normally been open.
Okay. Carlos, I also would say, I understand that you terminated this employee, but I do think that there's a role that counseling the employee plays. And I think we've heard from some other folks in town who have gone through this with employees, that they've had a good experience where the employee does succeed in taking it very seriously and understanding the impact to your business. They actually live through seeing that impact to the business. That can be an option. So I just offer that for consideration too. But I do appreciate, that you've taken the steps, and you were an early adopter, actually, I think, of getting the scanner in place when we had asked about that. But this piece of training and requiring training seems to be like a missing link that has to be plugged.
Right.
So. Okay, so I think we have language. Are you ready to make them who wants to make them in a form of a motion or motions?
Sure.
Maybe if we could do, I think if we can read all of them, then we can vote once at the end.
Sure. All right. I do that. I move that the select board finds sufficient evidence that on April 12th, 2023, Ponchos Taqueria Needham LLC, doing business as Ponchos Taqueria, violated 204 CMR 2.052 permitting an illegality on the licensed premises, to wit, Chapter 138, Section 34, sale or delivery of an alcoholic beverage to a person under 21 years of age. Should such, and then, yes, we found that evidence. Then B, move that the select board suspend Pancho's Taqueria Needham LLC DBA Pancho's Taqueria Section 12 Restaurant All Alcohol Liquor License for a period of 3 days to be served consecutively on set dates in the future. And C, move the select board authorize the town manager to draft and send notice of the select board's decision to the licensee and to the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission. And vote 2. Do you want to vote all together? Okay. Vote 2A, move that the select board finds sufficient evidence that on April 12th, 2023, Pancho's Taqueria Needham LLC DBA Pancho's Taqueria violated Town of Needham alcohol regulations revised July 26, 2022, Section 4.6.11 relative to training required by staff who serve alcoholic beverages. And B, move that the select board suspends Pancho's Taqueria Needham LLC DBA Pancho's Taqueria Section 12 Restaurant All Alcoholic Liquor License for a period of 1 day to be served consecutively on set dates in the future. And C, move that the select board authorizes the town manager to draft and send notice of the select board's decision to the licensee and to the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission.
Second that.
And I would note that both sets of dates consecutive with each, shall be consecutive
Yeah,
with each other.
before. Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Then coming into the vote, Marcus.
Aye.
Kevin,
Yes.
Kathy,
Aye.
Heidi,
Aye.
and the board chair votes yes. Thank you for coming
Thank you.
in. I appreciate it. And we look forward to not seeing you again
Exactly.
here.
Yeah, here.
We'd
is a
rather
better
see
way to
you
put
at
it.
Poncho's.
Hopefully soon.
Okay,
right.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for coming in. We appreciate it. All right, the next item on our agenda is the town manager's report. We're coming into a bunch of committees that we've been working at, trying to get created and looking at all the different charters and compositions. So, Kate,
Katie's gonna take home.
Katie.
Coming home.
come on to the table.
Madam Chair. So I am back for a second time on the Housing Needham Hone Advisory Group. There was questions about the how we pronounce it, and I'm fine tuning it to say we're honing our zoning. So we're all going to remember that.
Okay.
So
Marketing is everything.
so we're back before you. The first time was to discuss that the recommendation was to create this group so that we would have a broad group of lived experiences and professional experiences to lead our community engagement efforts around honing our zoning for MBTA communities, multifamily housing requirement. The planning board discussed this charge and composition at their last meeting. The only changes that were made that came out of that were the 2 slots that the planning board appoints around architect, land use planner, land use attorney, or real estate developer. They kept the same number of positions and similar professional experience, but just have more flexibility by having each seat be able to be any of those things instead of segmenting them more specifically. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions, but the recommendation is that we seek your approval and adoption of this. And I will just note, we have been collecting applications already for volunteers who are interested. We've gotten some really talented and interesting people. I would encourage anyone out there listening, if you are a renter in Needham, you rent your home, we would love for you to apply very soon, like this week.
Can it be apartment or home? Like it could be an apartment, or has to be
yes,
home? Okay,
yes,
okay.
just a
All
yes,
right, just
yes.
wondering.
If where you live, you pay rent instead of a mortgage, and you want to serve on this committee, please apply.
Okay. And I will just remind the community, this is for the MBTA Communities Act. It is to create multifamily housing, and the town is committed to meeting this law from the state, which means that we will create by right the ability to create this type of housing for a certain amount of space and potential for a number of houses, so, or households. So we look forward to figuring out how to do that and present that to the community in a reasonable way. But there is a housing shortage in the area, and we are all trying to collaborate and work to make it less so that housing prices will improve. That's the theory. Okay. All right. Any questions on the composition of this? Otherwise, I would welcome a vote if there's no questions from the board about the proposed composition and charter of this group. We're expecting to get the group going sometime over the summer, right? Is our plan?
Yes, and my understanding is interviews are happening now, so we might even come back to you at your next meeting with some members to appoint if the vice chair is ready.
Great. Okay.
Getting that.
Could I have a motion then?
Yes. Madam Chair, I move that the select board vote to adopt the Housing Needham Advisory Group composition in charge, honing on our zoning.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? I see Heidi has a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out there, I know that we don't have control over this item, but I do think it's really important for this committee to have a real estate developer take part, because we need to make sure that the zoning that we set up is appropriate and attractive for people to come in and develop. And I just worry that if we leave this group off of our committee inadvertently because we're including some other fabulous people, it could be to our detriment. So I just want to throw that out there, and otherwise I'm ready to vote.
So I agree and share that concern. I have mentioned that also to the chair of the planning board, that is, I think, a particularly valuable role that could be held on this committee. And I know that the planning board has been seeking developers who might be able to serve here. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, coming into the vote, Marcus.
Yes.
Kevin.
Aye.
Kathy. Aye. Heidi.
Yes.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the next committee.
So Madam Chair, we've been talking about this one for a long time. The Mobility Planning Coordinating Committee. In January, the board voted to approve the rest of the Transportation Planning Committee's recommendations. And this one required town meeting action, which we got as a unanimous vote at the annual town meeting, so that the Transportation Committee is now removed from the general bylaws and are asking the board to approve the final Mobility Planning and Coordinating Committee with the composition and charge set forth.
So we've seen this charge a few times at this point, but we can now make it real now that the Transportation Committee is out of the charter and we have this new structure. I know that there are at least several people who are hoping to start to move forward on this soon. And we definitely need it.
And we should see recommendations for this, because they're actually, many of the appointees are people who
Coming
are holding
from.
other positions that are already existing. So again, with the work of the vice chair and some of the ones that are already existing, we should have some of these at the end of the month.
Right.
Any other questions? Then I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board vote to adopt the composition and charge of the Mobility Planning Coordinating Committee.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Marcus?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Right. Our third committee of the evening.
The third committee is the Quiet Zone Working Group. As we talked about at several of our prior meetings, the board withdrew the warrant article for the design of the Quiet Zone and committed to a process for refreshing the feasibility study with the goal of seeking combined design and construction funds at the 2024 annual town meeting. So we recommend that this working group be created to help oversee the refresh process.
Any questions? If there are none, then I would welcome a vote on this one,
All right.
or a motion.
A
Sorry.
motion. I'll make a motion. The board vote to adopt the composition and charge for the Quiet Zone Working Group.
Second.
All right. Yes, there's the horn, exactly.
Yeah, Ernie.
Right on time.
Right on time. Coming into the vote,
Aye.
Marcus.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Kathy.
Aye.
Heidi.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And this group, the plan is to go to the finance committee next week?
Yes, yes.
As I
Yeah,
recall.
we'll be seeking a reserve fund transfer for the funding.
Okay.
And hope to have this committee starting in July because we have a short window.
Right.
So you'll see some appointments from this committee too, probably. end
At
of
the
month.
next meeting.
Mhm.
The
Lots of
final
stuff.
one, Madam Chair, is the Town Finance Community Housing Oversight Committee, which we're calling TCHOC. I don't have a zippy jingle for it yet, but that's where we are. I know the fact sheet says that the CPC proposed the creation of the committee. A little more nuanced, really. The CPC said we would appreciate some help overseeing how town funds are being put into community housing that are not being directly performed by the town. And so we've recommended the select board and the staff are recommending the creation of this TCHOC, which I know that the CPC will be very happy to help out with. So what the committee will do is monitor the town's investment in community housing. So it's going to be, we have some very big projects, particularly at the Housing Authority. There aren't any other known community investments, but there certainly could be in the future that this or a successor committee could work on. So I recommend adoption of the charge and composition.
When the group met to discuss the creation of this committee, we talked about everything that ranged from something that was PBBC-like to where we landed. It was determined that the best course of action for the town was to land with this more oversight kind of committee, that it was not in the town's benefit to sort of directly be involved with the invoices and be that closely in touch with the project. So just in case that's a question from some people about, is this really like the PBBC and doing that same type of work? It's not at that level. So I just want to make sure people understand that. But the town's investment in these projects will be a significant portion of them still. And given that they are taxpayer dollars, we think it's important that we be able to account for and understand the ways in which the dollars are being spent and that they're being spent appropriately and at appropriate levels for these types of projects. So
Okay.
if there are no questions, I welcome a motion.
Sure, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that the board vote to adopt the composition and charge for the Town Finance Community Housing Oversight Committee, TCHOC.
Second that.
And a second. Any further discussion? Coming into the vote, Marcus.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Kathy.
Aye.
Heidi.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
I note, Madam Chair, there are 4 seats on these 4 committees for the select board members. So I encourage members who are interested in serving to contact the vice chair.
All right.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you.
Okay. Plenty of work again to go around. That brings us, is there anything else in the town manager's report that you would like to share with us?
Not today.
Are you sure?
Yes. No more committees this week, please.
No more committees this week. All right. Committee reports. I don't know if there's anybody at the table who wishes to share.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. King, are you going to talk about climate or about something else?
Cap C.
There we go. Climate Action Planning Committee.
Climate Action met and KLA, the consultants doing the greenhouse gas study, has started their community meetings. They sort of showed us their deck of what they're attacking, and it's very compelling evidence. What's sort of gratifying is that there is a path forward, and there's a bit of optimism too about it. We can do this. So it'll be interesting to see how we roll out parts of the residential, commercial, and transportation issues for the town, but it's coming.
And we could mention that there is a survey.
Yes, there is a survey in the field. Is it still out?
Yes. Here, I was looking for it just to see if I could tell people where to find it easily. So it was sent out in News You Needham. I don't see anything that directly links to it from the website. So I don't know if we have a way to maybe highlight that. We've had a number of surveys, but maybe if there's a way that people could know where to go to find the latest open one, that would be great.
It'll be-
Cecilia's got,
It'll be on the Climate Action Plan Committee's webpage tomorrow.
Okay.
okay.
There it is.
All right.
Even have to write that.
It just would be great to make it as easy as we can to find so that we can get input from people. I mean,
Yeah.
the committee spent a good amount of time trying to figure out how to craft that survey so that we could get the most actionable information out of it from the community and input to help us shape the most immediate part of the plan going forward. Marcus, do you want to say a few words about Nuwari? Otherwise, I have some words, but if you want to start, Nuwari met last night.
Yes,
for
we
their
met last
annual
night
meeting.
for our annual gathering of the minds and the committee. It was kind of nice, even, I was there through Zoom to see everybody and kind of go through a year in review since the last time that we met. A lot of positive things, a lot of things that we're proud to have put forth. But also, as we gather with those minds that have so many unique perspectives, it was nice to, hear from and I think understand how far we need to go. And I think that is so relevant for the town that we live in and the things that, kind of make us run, make us function, structural things. But overall, it was just really, it kind of made me smile to be with everybody again, but also to know how much work put in to where we are currently. And then how it seems motivated people are to be a part of the solution for something tangible that will be in this town for years to come, from all different groups, walks of life, genders, identity, race, and how we can really make it a place that you want to come and live in, because things aren't, we talked a lot about being uncomfortable and having conversations. We talked a lot about in the schools, and is it too much to just hone on certain topics as much as we do, and then that falls on deaf ears. So like, where are we establishing the relationship with race and other significant topics, how early we're doing that. So at some point it is as common as talking about math and social study and science, or it doesn't feel like it's uncomfortable. It feels like this is what you learn, this is what you know, and you're not ashamed, being a part of the majority or the minority, to learn about these things and knowing, especially at a young age, that you are not the product of your ancestors and what they did to people, but you can be a part of how we carry and how we put humans first going forward.
Yeah, I think that's important. I thought it was interesting because we spent time sort of reviewing the progress against goals. And as people who have been here over the past year know, the board had a number of goals, but we've continued to have the police in. We've worked through a number of things related to our employment practices. There's been training for managers throughout town staff. All these things have come forward in public session at the select board as we've been working through them. Marcus and Vivian Chu have been working with Katie and Kate on some focus groups or conversation groups with people of color in town, again, with the goal of creating conversation space so that we can understand where some of the challenge and the discomforts are and what that might mean to us going forward and how we can be thinking about making some improvements. When the group began their work, right, they focused on getting their mission and guiding principles in place. They also created some priorities of topics. The top of that list at the time, 3 years ago, trying to remember exactly what the timeline is, was police. And what I would say is that police don't appear to be at the top of the list now. They continue to be a concern. All right. And people want to continue to monitor and hear what the police are doing. And they are grateful for the work that Chief Schlittler and all of the Needham public safety officers are putting into place and their commitment to that work. There was much more of a discussion that took place last night around when we talked about the priorities that the committee had. Schools was one that was clearly a priority from the community and from the committee. And we really sort of said, well, the schools have the real coalition, so we're kind of going to let them do their work. We had some discussion last night that said maybe there's a way we should re-engage with the school to talk about how community engagement might be something we could work on together. There was really a request that said that piece doesn't feel like it's coming along in quite the same way as some other aspects of the work that the schools are doing, which are very appropriate as it relates to curriculum and school culture. But maybe the piece related to community engagement might be something we'd work on together. One of the other things that happened that came out of, I think I'm grateful because the committee's been together for long enough that there's a lot of trust between the people in the committee and willingness to sort of put ideas that people are struggling with out on the table to be talked about. And that really led to a discussion that I thought was quite productive as it relates. We think it could be incorporated into orientation for new committee members, which had been something that has been under discussion that can include things like open meeting law, the code of conduct, and applying an equitable lens to all of our committee work. So we're trying to think about how we incorporate this into just the day-to-day that we do working with groups that the select board might be responsible for as well. So
I was going to say a lot of that is just naming it from the beginning, being transparent about if you're signing on to do this committee or board, this is what you should expect.
These are all
This
the
is
things
all
you
of the
should
things that encompasses when we think about onboarding and where we want to see it go from here and the intentionality behind everything that we do.
Yeah. So at any rate, so that's my Nuari report from last night. I think that's all. Those are the only two committees we have going right now. Kathy.
Madam Chair, I want to share just some thoughts from my open house. Oh, no,
Office hours.
Office hours. Absolutely. Would love to hear about office hours.
So a couple of concerns from constituents just to share. One of the people is concerned about people riding bikes in the downtown area, downtown Needham Center, as well as Needham Heights. And if you come out of a store, do you get like knocked down by a bike and what, whether it might be possible to put some signage or something to let people know of that. And then the other concern or thought that was expressed was actually about light pollution and what some different communities are doing about that, about how you shade streetlights and how you choose certain types of lighting, both for color and for the amount of light in order to address light pollution. And she shared some of the health impacts actually of having too much light pollution. So just some concerns from residents that were expressed at the office hour.
So we would need to ask Ms. Lustig about that, but I believe that those were among the considerations when we put in the new LED lights several years ago. And certainly I know that when the planning board's looking at projects, that they also consider light pollution and shielding. So the town is not unaware of those issues, but we can certainly let whoever the constituent know what the town is routinely doing in that area.
And bikes are to be walked
Bikes are to be walked on sidewalks.
in the downtown.
So
We can do some signage around that, something creative. I just want to make sure that the board was aware before the kids in here with the bikes.
before we did that. And I would hope that when we do things like the bike rodeos in the spring, that that's part of what we're teaching children. So maybe that's something to circle back and just double check on as well, that they would know. Okay. Miles, do you remember, are the next office hours, are they me? Or is there one more in June?
I think I'm July 15th.
I'm looking this up right now.
Here we're asking Miles to quickly search and find something. He was the keeper of the office hours. But
The next office hours are Marcus on July 15th via Zoom, and Marianne, you have August 8th here in the select board chambers.
okay. So July 15th are the next office hours and Marcus will be via Zoom. So we will continue to publicize those as they come up, and we're grateful to hear from people who have concerns and look forward to talking to folks. Okay. If we have no other business, I would welcome a motion to adjourn while it's still daylight.
What? So move.
Second.
I was beginning to despair of a second. That took a long time. Any further discussion? All in favor, Marcus,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Kathy. Aye. Heidi. I think Heidi's saying yes. And the chair says yes. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Heidi.